Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone, and welcome to my channel. Today we have a 2010 3-valve 4.6 Explorer that I'm replacing the timing chains on. So in this video I'm going to show you how to do that. There's not a really good description of how to replace these timing chains because if you look up the procedure walks you through if you're replacing the phasers and everything. And they want you to remove cam followers, 3 followers on each side to keep the cams from moving. And you don't need to do all of that. I'll show you how to do that. It took me a little bit of figuring it out, and I figured out how to do it. So let me show you how to do that. Let's get into it. Before I do that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you're definitely going to want to see. All right, let's get into it. Let me show you how to do this job. All right, we got a 2010 4.6 Explorer with the 3-valve. We're going to be replacing the timing chains and all the guides. Now this one here came in just fairly recently and had some compression problems and some timing codes. So the customer decided to do timing chains, so we're going to tear it down and inspect it, and I'm going to show you how to do these timing chains. So step one, just drain the coolant while you're doing this. We're going to go ahead and take this air intake tube off. We're going to go ahead and get this all these PCV hoses and vacuum hoses out of the way. You're going to go ahead and take off your fan shroud and your fan clutch. Don't forget your connector for your fan clutch. We're going to go ahead and get the radiator hoses off, and then we got to get the valve covers off of both sides. So we got to get all the coils out, got to move the harness. What I do on these, I like to just take an air nozzle and blow all the crap out of here so that way it doesn't go in the valve cover area in the head. And yeah, so let me go ahead and get this air intake tube off and I'll show you some more stuff. All right, so once you take off your fan clutch, we got to go ahead and get the drive belt off and get the pulleys off so we can access the front cover. Before we do that, we got to get all the connectors disconnected. You're going to disconnect your PCM connectors, disconnect your coil connectors, your fuel injector connectors, so we can move this harness around and make it easy. All right, so we need to get the valve covers off, and to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to take your PCM out and take your PCM bracket. There's 2 bolts above and 1 nut down below. You're going to have these 2 AC line brackets that bolt down to the nut. You got the wheel speed sensor for the ABS. Go ahead and disconnect that and get that out of the way. You got a vacuum line, and you got this other connector that goes over to the fender. You got the vacuum line here, and then once you do that, you can get to the back bolts of the valve cover through this opening here. It's pretty hard to access without taking all that off. The hardest part after that is lifting up this harness to get the valve cover out. Okay, so you're going to take off your water pump pulley, and you got to get off your drive belt, your idlers. You got 2 idlers on each side, 2 idlers on the right, 1 on the left. You're going to go ahead and disconnect your crank sensor connector and get that out of the way. Next, you got a power steering line bracket, and then a bracket down below. You got to disconnect both of those, and then I just roll that bracket on the power steering line away to keep it out of the way and keep it from getting in my way. Next thing you got is you got your power steering line bracket also that bolts up to the pump, and you got 2 13mm nuts. Get that off, push that out of the way. And then you got to get your pump off, and your pump has 3 bolts with a stud on the end, and they're 13mm. You got to get those off so we can drop this pump off of the cover. Okay, you probably could just unbolt the top bolt and let it fall back and then loosen the other 2 so the pump falls away, and that might give you enough clearance to get the timing cover out. I just took the whole thing out, and then you got a wire harness that connects to the lower bolt on the back side of the pump. And that's the retainer right there. You got to take that off before you get the bolt out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the balancer off. Now what I did for the balancer was I used my 1/2-inch snap-on gun, and you can see how close it is to the radiator. So what I did was I used my Capri Tools 1/2 inch drive stubby socket, and with that in my 1/2 inch gun, I had perfect amount of room. Let me show you why this is so important to have these sockets. Is I'm going to take an 18 millimeter Matco socket and compare it to the Capri Tools stubby socket. Those are both 1/2 inch drive, both 18 millimeter, and you can see the difference. Now that amount right there gave me enough clearance to put my full-size 1/2 inch gun with this socket and have plenty of room to get it done. Okay, so to remove this balancer, I use my Chrysler 3-jaw puller, and this enables me to have different lengths. So this one I use the 4-inch adapter. This set comes with a whole bunch of different lengths. So the 4-inch worked perfect. You just set it up in there, grab it on the pulley, and I was able to extract this puller. I was able to get this balancer off with my snap-on long neck 1/4 inch 3/8 ratchet, my long neck. So it's not incredibly tight to get off. All right, so you have 15 cover bolts and 4 oil pan to cover bolts to remove. Then what you got to do is we're going to have to break the cover loose on each corner. And these up here is held with silicone. Do not pry against the front of the cam or you will damage that phaser. Do not pry there. So you got to pry in all the corners to get it loose. And then we're able to pull it towards us and get it out. Okay, so once you get the cover off, you're going to put your crank bolt back in here. You're going to rotate until you're going to see an arrow over here that's going to point up. And you're going to see an arrow over here pointing up. Mark your chains just to make sure your new ones are correct. And also you'll be able to tell. So you can see I marked the dot on the crank sprocket. Should be at 6 o'clock. So I marked the chain for the front one. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the tensioner off. You can see there's really not much to this tensioner. It's not really doing anything. When I roll the engine over a little bit more, this top chain here on the non-tension side hangs down and almost touches this chain here. So it's stretched and worn out. So, all right, let me get this off. All right, this is where it gets tricky. So one cam moves, one doesn't. One cam moves, one doesn't. The procedure wants you to remove 3 cam followers, which requires a valve spring compressor and removing keepers. You don't need to do all that. You just need someone to hold on to this cam right here so you can remove the tensioner and remove all the components on the passenger side cam, the right chain. Once you get the tensioner off, you get the guides off, and you can slip the chain out while someone holds on to it. What I did was once I took the chain off, I found something to bolt up to the head, and it held the cam sprocket in place. So that way I was able to leave this cam sitting while I worked on the other side. Okay, so the left side cam did not move. I had somebody hold on to it just in case. I went ahead and swapped all the components on this chain. And then I came back over here, had somebody hold on to this while I took the thing I made out and I reassembled this chain, got it all together. Now the right chain on the passenger side has a R with an arrow pointing up. And the driver's side chain, the left side, has an L with an arrow pointing up. These are the marks you want. Okay, so what you can't see here is I marked the front chain to the cam sprocket, to the crank sprocket, and then I drew a line along the links on the back chain, knowing where they all line up. So that way I could at least see where my marks are. So this cam sprocket is going to move. Make sure you have somebody hold it. If you unbolt that tensioner, then your chain will move if somebody is not holding this cam sprocket. If you have the tool to hold the tensioner, you can push the slipper down and stick the tool in there, and that will lock the tensioner in the released position. So that way you can unbolt it with ease. If you do not have the tool, all you have to do is keep tension on the tensioner while you unbolt the bolts and then slip the chain out. Then you're going to slip your guide off. Once you do that, you're going to unbolt the upper guide, which is just two 8mm bolts. And then you're going to walk your chain off. And then on the other side, you're going to unbolt your tensioner. Now this one's a little trickier to get out because it's inset into the head. So it sits in there like a 1/2 inch. So you just kind of have to use a screwdriver and kind of pry it out a little bit. This cam did not move for me. Then you're going to slip your slipper out. You're going to unbolt your lower guide, which is two 8mm also. Once you do that, you're going to get your chain off. You're going to walk it off in a clockwise position. Slip it off of the crank sprocket. Then you're going to reinstall it. Now this is the part number for the 3-valve 4.6 liter timing chain set. It comes with everything. It did not come with crank sprockets or phasers, but it came with tensioners, all the guides, and both chains for both sides. If you're doing this job, I would strongly recommend that you replace the phasers as well because they are a failure. This was a customer request, replace my timing chains because the tensioners were noisy. Now, do not forget, once you're done with all this, to put your crank sprocket back on. This is your pickup for your crank sensor. I always lay pickups inside of timing covers because I have actually forgotten to put the pickup in on a chain motor one time, and I also did it on a timing belt motor. It will not start if you do not put that pickup in. It's very important. Leave it in the cover.
All right, so here we go. Here is how you put the cover back on. You're gonna have a bead of silicone right there where the head and the block meet, on the top and bottom, on both sides of the head, and over here, and at the bottom, at the corners. So that's that. The torque for the front cover is right there, 15 bolts, and you got 18 foot-pounds. Now before you take this cover off, let me give you one little disclaimer here because this almost happened to me. So some of these bolts in this front cover look like this. So it is very hard to see them, especially if your front cover is really dirty. So what happened is I had one of these at the bottom driver's corner of the timing cover, and I missed it because it's so small and it was super dirty that I was trying to pry the cover and the cover wouldn't come off. So you got to be really careful and go around the whole cover with a mirror to make sure you don't have any bolts, because if you do, you'll break your cover. This is the first time I've come close to breaking one. I haven't forgot any timing bolts in a long time. It's the first one in a while. But as you can see how easy it is to miss this one. So just make sure you put your bolts back where they go. This is where you take it apart. You want to really make sure that you keep track of where these different bolts go. Go ahead and get everything cleaned up real good. Put your new crank seal on, and go ahead and put your cover in. All right, let me get everything cleaned up real good, and I'll show you what that looks like.
Okay, so before you put your cover in, you want to make sure that you have silicone at all your joints. You're going to have it at the cylinder head to cylinder block on both sides. You're going to have it at the corner of the block to oil pan on both sides. And the same thing on the other side, cylinder head to block on both sides. And you want to make sure that you have plenty of silicone there on that joint. You want to make sure that you have your gasket in and it's all pressed in. Make sure your crank sensor is back in your cover if you took it out. And make sure your crank seal's in. It's easier to put the crank seal in the cover while the cover is off than it is to do it in the car. Now let me give you one little disclaimer. You want to make sure that you have everything clean before you get ready to do this. So make sure you keep track of your bolts. These are all different bolts in all different positions. All 4 top bolts of the cover are the same. They are 18mm with a long stud. The one on the driver's side lower is an 18mm with a short little stud. And on the passenger side is a 13mm with a long stud. All the other bolts are the same except for that one right there, which is a straight 18 on the driver's side. Now the oil pan bolts are 177 inch-pounds plus 60 degrees, and the cover bolts are 18 foot-pounds. Make sure you get all that torqued The oil pan, I just went 177 and gave it a little turn, and that's it. Don't forget your power steering pump and bracket before you put your valve cover on. It's easier now.
All right, so when you got your valve cover bolts like this and you have the rubber grommet, I just take a pocket screwdriver and I slide it up through there. I'll see if I can set the phone here and I'll show you. And then I just take a razor blade and just cut like that, and it comes right off. So you want to make sure that you replace those grommets, because the valve cover is only going to bolt down up to this bottom part here. And if the grommets are worn out, then your valve cover won't have enough tension and it'll leak. So make sure you always replace your grommets with your valve cover gasket if you can. So I'm getting these set up here, and I'll tell you what the torque spec is.
So before you put your valve cover in, make sure you lube up the O-ring, the seal here for the oil control solenoids, so it slides on a lot easier. Now on the back, you want to make sure that you take a mirror and you look along the back side before you bolt it down to make sure your gasket is in place. Sometimes if the gasket starts to fall, it'll catch the back bearing cap and it'll fold over and you'll have a huge oil leak. So it's 89 inch-pounds, and you'll just need a helper to help lift up the harness to slip the valve cover in. And then, like I said, just make sure the gasket's in place before you bolt it down.
All right, so in this video, I showed you how to replace the timing chains in this 4.6 3-valve engine without following the procedure. You can do it a lot faster than the procedure says than what the book time is, because you don't need to remove all those followers and worry about valve keepers and all that crap. You don't have to deal with all that. Plus, it's just special tools you don't need. Valve spring compressors and all that stuff. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you're definitely going to want to see. Also, check me out on Instagram at Nuts and Bolts with Tone for my daily life as a mechanic. Show you all kinds of cool stuff, show you what I'm working on from a day-to-day basis, show you tools, show you all kinds of cool stuff. Also check out my merchandise store where you can get a t-shirt or a coffee cup and support the channel. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you next time.